Good morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering finance on this year Thursday, Tuesday, Rise and Shine, and give God the glory. And today we're looking at a topic: Babylon as a system is still here with us today. So Babylon as a system is still here with us today. Thanks for joining me here. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for your word, and this day I pray, the Lord, that you may bless us as we walk in the light of thy countenance, and may you be with us as we understand these things for our salvation. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So I'm looking at this topic here, which is Babylon as a system is still here with us. So I'm continuing our theme from yesterday, where I started looking at this idea here that the possibilities for good or for bad that modernity has brought. And so just laying some stuff here. So the possibilities for good or bad or for evil or whatever you want to call it, that we have possibilities if we understand what this life is all about and what the concepts of prophecy and stuff like that can do for us. And so there's things going on that one must be aware of in order to succeed in this life. And so with finance, it's this we'll not be able to thoroughly go into the Babylonian financial system, but just want to show you here some concepts here of that the Babylonian system is still here with us, and just some quick notes that I want to share with you. So the Babylon system is still here with us. So the theme again, the possibilities for good or bad that modernity has brought. So I'll go back again, start back again with our main text, which is in Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. Daniel 12, verse 1. And notice it says here, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time, that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. So in the book, so there's a book of life as we understand, and everyone that's found written in the book shall be delivered. And so there's a lot there. Not going to be able to unpack all of that, but reading that for context. So in verse 2 now it says, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the star forever and ever. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. So when we talk about the time of the end, that you have a possibilities for experiencing good and you have a possibility for experiencing bad in a very profound way. I really believe that's the life that we're living because of the advent or the advancement in technology and so forth. You can do very crazy things, and like man's ability to kill and destroy is phenomenal, but also to keep alive and to feed much people and to take care of things like famine and pestilence is phenomenal also. So we live in a time where there's this extreme because of the increase in knowledge and the increase in travel that we experience, and this is what we want to do. So keep going with our main text here. In verse 8 through 10, it says here, and I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O Lord, what shall be the end of these things? So we're talking about the end of time, which we believe that we are on the precipice of the closing work of this earth's history. And he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. So there'll be better understanding in Daniel and understanding of the book of Daniel when we come to the end of time. Notice here, many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. So here it's very clear that the wise will understand. So what will the wise understand? There's things that we must understand for us to understand the narrative on what's going on. So there's things that people are doing, and they're doing it almost like, I would say now, they're doing it similar to like a fish or a bird, where they're just doing by instinct. They're just doing their thing, but they don't understand that there's a great controversy, or there's a plot, and this life is like a theater, and different actors are acting out their parts, but they're acting their parts, but they don't understand. But God's people are supposed to understand. And when we see certain, what you would call it, evidence or signs that things are wrapping up, we're moving in one direction. When they see certain things happening, they don't understand what's going on, even though they're part of it. So we want to be aware of what's happening and understand the Bible. So one of the important narratives to understand is that Babylon is still here with us. Babylon as a system is still here with us. Now somebody say, but the kingdom Babylon, which was a city state, is not here with us today. Yes, it's not here with us. The geographical landmass where you'd find Babylon would be in Iraq, and that city is not in existence anymore. But the system, as if you want to call it spiritual, or the system as a form of government and how they do government, is here with us today. And I'll show you probably two aspects of it: the concept of spiritualism and the concept of the financial focus of Babylon, which was the Golden Empire. So I'm going to go forward before I go backwards. So I'm going to go backwards later on, but I'll go forward first. So I'll go to the end of the Bible in Revelation 18, almost to the end. And we're going to read Revelation 18, verse 1 through 4, then 7, and then 11 through 14, and then 23. So I'll take some pieces of it here and show you that the Bible still refer in the last days that the last empire on the face of the planet is referred to, the last dominant empire, I should say, is referred to as Babylon. And so there's a certain aspect of Babylon that's very important to note that the Bible points to, that Babylon is still here. So as a system, Babylon is here. And how do I understand this now? I say this before I go on to reading the text, that when you have when you're looking at current governments, each government, as it states in Daniel, takes from the other government. So if you look at Egypt, Egypt did what I'm going to talk about here, which is sorcery, witchcraft, magicians, so forth. And then Israel as a nation, when the scepter passed to them, was not supposed to do that. But then later on, after Solomon, and while Solomon was in reign, he started doing that. Started have the what we call Baal worship and stuff like that, Ashtaroth, Chemosh, all this type of worship, and then that became part of the system. Then, by the time we come to Babylon, Babylon was already establishing this type of worship and this type of environment where leaders of the system are into the arts, the mystery religions. And this never left any type of kingdom. Whether you go to Greece, which they're into all kind of X-Men and these superheroes, or you go to Rome and stuff like that. So this always carried over this concept of this mystery religion. Shall I show you that this is something that is in all religion, secret societies and stuff like that? So just have to summarize that, because that's a whole study in itself. So notice in Revelation 18, verse 1 through 4, firstly, it says, after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. So this is what we call the last great message for the earth in symbolic terms. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. So Babylon has a history. First, there was this story of a gentleman in the Bible, or a figure in the Bible called Nimrod, and he made Babel. And from there, you got the Tower of Babel, which represents rebellion against God. But also, then God confused the language, so it also represents man's power and man's rebellion against God to not submit to God's way. And then also it represents God confusing the language. So it represents a few different things. Then later on, we understand from on the same site that they built the city Babylon, and then later on Nebuchadnezzar became the king of it and made it become the most powerful empire. So Babylon fallen, and it was taken over by spiritualism, and then God basically wiped it out. They rebelled against God again, and then God sacked it by the Iranians, which we call the Medes and the Persians. So Babylon as an entity and the concept of Babylon still lives on. Even though Babylon itself came to an end, each empire after that takes on some of the the what you call it, the identity or the characteristics of the previous empire. In other words, like Egypt had the scepter, Egypt had magicians, and then by the time we get to Solomon, Solomon was not supposed to have magicians, but Solomon, one of Solomon's main wife, was an Egyptian. And then from people from princesses from other nations, then he started adapting those concepts and forms within his kingdom. Then by the time we get to Babylon, they already was steep into that, and before Daniel came along. So, and that continued to this day. So to this day, you have, like in our society, they'll say, you go around, you see these secret society buildings, and they say free and accepted, but secret societies are old world paganism, which is what we're really talking about here. Just old world paganism, mystery religion. That's that's my summary. All right. So notice here it says that Babylon is fallen. So Babylon is fallen. So how in the last days, at the end of time, the Bible predict that Babylon would be in existence because it never left, and that's my philosophy. Anyhow, it never left. Babylon never left. Babylon is always with us. Babylon is as a system that is just here and always with us, and it never left. And I'll show you that the in a quick less than an hour, I show you that it's always here and it is always part of it. The two concepts of Babylon, golden empire and representing ultimate rebellion against God through sorcery. Notice here, for all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacy. Like I always say, if you're a Bible student or student of prophecy, if you go to Revelation 14 and read the three angel message, the three angel message in Revelation 14 does not mention merchandise, merchant. But when we come to Revelation 18, the focus is on actually merchandising and spiritualism. So both of them are pointed out in Revelation 18. That tell me when the message was preaching after the summer of 1844, the Millerites and then the Advent movement, their focal point was not the merchandising, even though merchandise was part of the craziness of Babylon. But when we come here, merchandising and this concept of money becomes important when we understand Babylon. But yet the mystery religion part is still here, and I'll show you in a few minutes. So notice here, Babylon in verse 2 again is fallen because it's become the habitation of devils. So if you look at Babylon, and I'm going to read it in a few minutes. If you look at Babylon back in the time when Daniel was there, it was shown that all these secret arts, secret society type people was running the system. And Babylon even became their manager. Daniel became their manager. Very, very crazy. He was actually their master. He was the number one because he was viewed by Nebuchadnezzar as being part of this witchcraft business, even though he wasn't. And I'll read it. He was referred to as, even when he went to, but he was referred to as the master of the magicians, but he wasn't a magician himself. So very interesting, but he became number 2 or number 3 below Nebuchadnezzar. So when you look at Babylon, it says it's fallen because it's become a cage. That means inside of it, it's caged up all these weirdos and all these crazy people. So it become a habitation. Devils live there. Foul spirit live there, and cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Everything crazy live there. So in Babylon is all this craziness going on. And when we look at what's going on in our world, just to tell you where I say Babylon is still with us, we look at our society is still made up like that. And I'll show you in a minute. But you can see this, that every hateful and unclean bird, you can go on the news right now and you can just see all this kind of weird craziness, like 2 women are married and one of them are pregnant with their first child. How is that possible? I thought there were 2 women. How did they? What's going on in Babylon? You see, it's the same. It's never left. So in other words, what's happening is that when you look at Babylon and you see what's happening in Babylon and what Babylon was all about with eunuchs and all this type of stuff, And then you look at, say, modern society and say the number one empire in the world. To all intents and purposes, like you're looking at the same thing. There's no difference. And that's basically what's going on. In other words, when God look at Egypt and he look at France, the Bible, the prophecy say it's like I'm looking at Egypt, right? Or you could look at a place and you read a story about Saddam, and then you look at a place and you'll be like, am I in Saddam? It's that similar idea. It's not that it says Babylon is here, literally, physically. Is that it is the characteristics of Babylon, and what was going on in Babylon is still here. So hopefully that's clear enough. So again, I'm going to repeat it again just in case you missed that, but I think you get it. So Babylon, as when you study it out, you understand what was going on in Babylon, and you look at it, you say, I think I understand what Babylon is all about. And then when you look at a society, you say, man, the society reflects Babylon. So that's what the Bible is doing here. The Bible is looking at what's going on in the empires or the dominant empire of the world. And it's looking at it and saying, it's like I'm looking at Babylon. That's basically what it is. So it's like the prophet is looking at Babylon. But yet Babylon is not there, but the behavior and the things that's going on. So as I say, you can go in the news and whatever you can see about Babylon, Saddam, some of these things, you could feel like, oh man, where am I? Am I back in Bible times? This is what I was saying to you. When you read the news yesterday, on the day before and stuff, you feel like, wait a minute, am I reading Bible times? Like I feel like I'm back in 2,000 years ago. It's that same concept. You hear like Iran is fighting with Israel. Remember, and then the Assyrians and the Jordanians with the Edom and Moab. When you say Jordan, you look at Edomite or Moabite or Amman Jordan, it's the same group of people. So that's what I'm saying. So when you look at it, you be like, they still behave in the same way. Think about it. People say we live in modern times, but think about the wars. As the wars ever stop, World War One, World War Two, Vietnam War, Korean War, war with Ukraine, war with Iraq, war with, it's the same wars. But people say we live in modern time. We just have ability to kill people more wonderfully. Like in World War II, I think they said over 78 million people died. So nothing have changed. But people say, oh, we live in modern times. And I'm trying to understand what they mean by that. I understand what they mean, but I just thinking life kind of continue go on with the same. So it's the same concept. Nothing has changed. War, rumors of wars. So notice here, Babylon is filled with a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. And the kings have committed fornication with her, and they have become rich through the abundance of her delicacies. So you see that money thing is involved with Babylon. And I heard a voice from heaven say, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. So then we must see that if the Bible tells us that Babylon, with all its unclean and hateful bird and all its money, because he has money, because Babylon was rich. Babylon was filled with all these magicians and sorcerers and stuff like that. But yet Babylon was rich. It was the golden empire. So we have to be looking and saying, golden empire, rich, filled with sorcery, all kind of weirdness. What do I see there? Do I see this? Because Babylon is not in existence, so you're looking for characteristics. So you see that, right? And then Babylon has to be hit with, it has to be about the sins, right? And then it has to have plagues. So when you're looking for end time characteristics, you're looking for trigger points or triggered language. The language here is very specific. So when you study backwards, you go back to Babylon and say, okay, and you come forward, just like with Egypt. Egypt had plagues. So if a country is referred to as Egypt, then you say, okay, where they hit with plagues. It's the same thing. So that you partake of not of her plagues. Plagues mean plural. So when we look, and so if I'm studying the Bible and I say, wait a minute, but I'm seeing Babylon, I'm seeing the confusion, I'm seeing the sorcery, but I'm not seeing the plagues. And then I see a certain plague. And now they say like opioid is a plague. They say we recently had what we call pestilence 19. That was a plague. So you say, okay, I'm looking for that. You see, because if it fits the narrative in 5 ways or 6 ways or 10 ways, remember, prophecy is so specific that you can't mess with it. You can't get it by accident or like by randomly saying stuff and then it fulfill. It has to be so specific that it become, remember, that there's no error in the word of God. There's error in me and you, but in our studies and stuff, but there's no error in the word of God. So Babylon has to fit certain description. And so when you see plagues and people getting wiped out and getting killed, you say, oh, okay, I think I know where I'm looking at. It's a Babylon. See, spiritual. It's just some characteristics, trigger words. Verse 7 now says, how much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she say in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. So you have to be able to, because remember, Babylon said that the similar thing. Nebuchadnezzar said, it's not this great Babylon that I've built, and then he sees sorrow. Then Belshazzar came out and he's desecrating the holy vessels, and he sees sorrows. He sees death and destruction. So it's the same thing. You have to look at, you have to say, okay, if Babylon is this, do I see them saying this thing? And then do I see them hit with sorrow? You see, do I see them hit with plagues and pestilence? You see, that's how I, at least how I think. So I'm explaining you my process. In verse 11 through 14, now we read, and the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth her merchandise anymore. So she's the capital of merchandise. So when you say Babylon, you have to say, okay, where's the capital of merchandise? Where's the country modernity that fits the description of Babylon? Everything must be in it. Because remember, Babylon, with all this craziness, Daniel was in it. So you see what's going on there. You see, it's because you can't come out of something that you're not in. You have to be physically in it to come out of it. Does that make sense? Because remember, when Daniel, by the time Daniel come to, I think, if I remember serving right, by the time Daniel come to, I think Daniel 5, when he's called to interpret the writing on the wall that the Iranians were coming, he was actually already in Iran. He was called, I think he was summoned from that era. So he already knew what was going down, what was next, who was next, who's up next, so to speak. He already know his prophecy. At least that part of the prophecy was open to him. So when we see Babylon, then you have to be in it to come out of it. So Daniel was in Babylon. Daniel was viewed even as one of the magicians in Babylon. Even though he was a spiritual person, but he was not on their spiritual level. He was not dealing with demons. He was dealing with angels, unfallen angels. And so Babylon was about money. It was spiritualism and money. So again, it's the same thing. You have to look and say, is can I see this somewhere? Does something fit this bill? And then you start getting it. Because remember, Babylon represent money, because Nimrod, and so forth. And then Babylon represent also spiritualism and defiance against God. Very interesting. So when you hear Babylon talking about they evolve and so forth, it is a fascinating thing that they shall see no sorrow. So for no man buy their merchandise anymore. The merchandise of no. Notice now it's going to list, and the Bible go painstaking. John here goes painstaking to list, so you can see that this is material. This you can't spiritualize all of this. All of this is literally. There's no figure here. There's nothing. It's just simply. There's no symbols and signs. It's just simply material possession, and so you can figure out who Babylon is. So notice that the merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones, of pearls and fine linen, and purple and silk and scarlet, and all fine wood, and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner of vessels of most precious wood, and of brass and iron and marble, and cinnamon and odors and ointments, and frankincense, and wine and oil, and fine flour, wheat and beasts, and sheep and horses, and chariots, and slaves, and souls of men. Very important. So when we have to say, you see, you start narrowing it down now. You're saying, okay, it's slaves, souls of men. Who's doing this? Historically, you could say, well, is Fiji, or Papua New Guinea, were they into doing this? You get this. So when you start saying slave, then you start saying who. Well, you see, you're narrowing down. It's like you have 180 something countries, and you start to say, who fits this description? Who has slaves? And it's just you're checking off. It's like is the Bible is giving you little symbols, and it's telling you this, that. You have a checklist. You go to the checklist, it started to becoming um, very clear which seven empires gave us slavery towards the end of time. You see, you can get it real quick. See, if you start saying slavery, slave, my memory is not serving me properly. Which seven empires on the planet gave us slavery? You see, and souls, trade in souls and body of men. That's fascinating. In the end of time, you see, boom, and then you see, or you narrow that down. Because it's just you start ticking off, all kind of cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Two women having a baby. How is that possible? It's craziness. And you start to go down your list. And as you go down the list, you start to be like, I think I'm getting it there. And some of these things I had to do a lot of research on, because then I say, well, all these seven Western tribes of Europe or kingdoms, one didn't do slavery, and it was what do people them call Swiss. They were the bankers of slavery, so they bankrolled it. So if you wanted to do a slave plantation, the Swiss would lend you the money, and then you could do it. So they never materially per se participate in slavery. They just bankroll it. You see how that works? And then you start to figure out material possession, capitalism, and then you boom, you start to go. So notice in verse 14, and the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all the things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more. So the things that thy soul lust after become about the lust of the flesh, the pride of life, and the lust of the eye. These are what we deal with. Now, verse 23, because somebody said, well, Lloyd, okay, but how do you know exactly where Babylon is located and what you're looking for, what kingdoms you're looking for? Because remember, Babylon is still with us. My topic is. Notice now we're going down now. We're drilling down, trying to summarize in a few minutes here. Years of study. So notice here in Revelation chapter 18, verse 23, and the light of the candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee, for thy merchants. So again, here, this is not referred to in Revelation 14. If you're a student, you understand why I keep saying that. This comes up only in Revelation 18, this concept of merchant. It's a merchandising system. But now we're going to find two of the key elements of Babylon. Merchants, and notice here, the merchants were the great men of the earth. So who are the great men of the earth? The people are the merchants. Is that true? Who are the great men of the earth today? Who are the greatest men on the planet today? Notice here, and for by thy sorceries were all the nations deceived. By thy sorceries, plural, a lot of sorceries. When you look at the word sorcery in the original text, the original language, if you have a concordance in your available on your phone, and you go to the word sorceries, what you'll quickly see there that the word sorceries is pharmakia. That word pharmakia lands again in the Bible in Galatians, I think chapter 2, talks about the works of the flesh. Pharmakia, which is where we get our modern word pharmaceutical. So sorcerers, a sorcery is what we call like a magician or witch that they brew their potion. And when they give you the potion, it could be a ayahuasca. And you give you the potion gets you diluted, but all the times it was used for worship. So that potion will make you start seeing visions and dreams and start hearing voices and seeing things, snakes. I don't know why is it that when people take certain drugs, they always see snakes. Various different drugs make people see snakes. Why snake? Why they can't see a little teddy bear? Why a snake? Why a snake? So if you see this concept here. The by thy sorceries are all the nation deceived. What's the head of the pharmaceutical companies and pharmacy? As I said, when you dealt with pestilence 19, did it stop the transmission? Their sorceries, or it just made people more sick? See, these are the questions one have to ask. When you see a lot of time that I remember if you ever spend some time studying the Columbine shooting, and you realize those kids were on drugs that make them numb. and have a history of making the people on those drugs go and do mass murders. Why? Where's the center, capital of mass murder? The most mass murders. What's causing that? Why so many people do mass murders on drugs and certain drugs? Look at the fentanyl outbreak. Look at the opiate outbreak. How did it come? It came legally. So the big thing. So if you look at it again, by thy pharmakia were all the nations deceived. But it is the pharmakias because there's many different deception. As you say, you go down to Florida and you have the magician down there and he's a rat. And the magician, the magic rat is, he can really get you going in all kind of deception. So we see here Babylon, merchant. So verse 23 give you two of the keys about what you're looking for. You're looking for merchants and you're looking for pharmakia. And again, you want to say, where does that come from, or what's the capital of that? Not that it doesn't happen in every other place, because remember, when we deal with sorcery, sorcery was in Babylon, Egypt, Media, Persia. All of them had sorcery. All of these entities always deal with the dark arts and what we call secret societies and stuff like that. But it's just talking about when you're looking for these characteristics. So Babylon is still with us. All the aspects of Babylon that you can read in Revelation 18, I'm going to read a little bit of Revelation 17, hopefully before we close. You'll see that this is here. But it's these entities, and they keep taking on this dark religion. And so that's why the wicked don't understand, because they don't understand these concepts, and they don't see that, why we have all these things going on in the society. And they don't understand that there's people behind it working in the background, plotting and doing stuff, but they're doing stuff for somebody or some entity. That's the important thing to understand. And this will explain some of some of the wickedness that we see with dead bodies piling up everywhere, or people getting caught in drugs. And you look at people on the side of the street, almost most of them started with legal drugs prescribed by them, prescribed by their doctors. Or they legally can buy now they can legally buy even marijuana. This is how crazy this is get. It's like drugs everywhere. Oh man. But people make phenomenal money off drugs. Genesis chapter 41, verse 8. Notice here we've been fighting a war against drugs. The war on drugs, they call it. And they never won the war on drugs. Because something you wonder, is the war on drugs or the war on killing the competition? And I really believe that it's more killing the competition, because there's no aim to win the war on drugs, because you're having a war on something that you legally prescribe and it's legal in the country. This is amazing. Like, what is the point? Anyhow, the drug capital is fighting against drugs. Like, what a joke. So Genesis chapter 40, Genesis 41, verse 8. Notice here, talking about Egypt. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled. This is the Pharaoh, the head of Egypt, the head witch, witch wizard. And he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret unto Pharaoh. So this is an important key. The difference between Joseph, which could be viewed as a magician, and Pharaoh's magician and wise men, is that Joseph have an understanding of the future. So when I was young, I'd learned this concept that, you see, the dark arts people, they can talk to you about stuff in the past, and they can make stab in the dark, and they might get something wrong. Like they say, they get something right. Sorry, they can get something right every now and then. But what I'd understand about true prophecy is foretelling the future, not in a predictive model. In other words, I can predict that, say, 5 days from now, I can have a model that tells me, 20 days from now, that it might be 72 degrees. And I might get it right. And somebody say, how do you know? Oh, because there's a model that says at this time of the year, such and such and such, this could be the mean temperature. And it could be right. It's a stab in the dark. It doesn't mean I'm a prophet. I'm just forecasting. But true prophecy lays out the future and is very specific. It can't be, there's no error in it. It has to happen this day, that time, this, very, very specific. Else you could have it by chance. So we don't deal in chance. We deal in very specific prophecy. So if you hear me, that's what I believe. That's why this is painstaking. So notice here in Genesis chapter 41, verse 8, it says here, Pharaoh calls the magicians. So this is an entity. This is something that is in these empires. They sometimes go to Christianity, and they for a while they'll so to speak dabble with Christianity, and then somebody will come along and say, let's go back to the to the dark arts to start contacting Satan or demons. So I'll read this little thing for you here. This is so just to show you how I just pulled this one. I didn't pull a modern one. I pulled a little bit older one. This was when I was a child, I guess. So this is this famous person. Just a quick read I want to read to you. This is famous person called Gene Dixon. So Gene Dixon was an American, what do you call it, soothsayer. I think there's another name for her, witch. No, astrologer. That's what it is. So Gene Dixon was American soothsayer. Dixon was born Linda Emma Pinkert, and they say our brother was a player for the some NFL team. So Gene Dixon, a famous sorcerer or astrologer or witch or whatever you call it. I don't think she do potions. I think if you have to be a witch, you have to do potion. I don't even know. So Jean Dixon was an astrologer. She would do astrology in the newspaper and that type of thing. And she said she run into a gypsy, and then the gypsy gave her a crystal ball and then read her palm and told her that she was going to be a powerful astrologer. So she would do crystal ball, and then I guess she look at the stars, the moon, and then make prediction. So Dixon now is known as somebody that she claimed that she predicted multiple things, something about the Pope, two popes, and then about Reagan and about Kennedy assassination, but she waffled. So when you read about her, then you read real quickly that her method is a stab in the dark. Sometimes she make a prediction about somebody, like she said, I think Reagan, somebody's going to win the election, and then she pull back and say it was going to be Nixon, and and then Nixon will win, and then so forth. So she would waffle. When you read prophecy in the Bible, they don't waffle. This is going to happen, and it's happening exactly when it's going to happen. When it struck clock, the cock crow, um, Peter will deny me. Boom, it happened. It's just going to happen the way it's supposed to happen. So that's why we talk about end times. We're talking about things that are very specific. It can't be, there's no error in it. It's going to happen this way, and it's going to happen this way. Okay. So, one of the people that she would deal with, she says she was, so Richard Nixon followed Jean Dixon, that's her name. Yeah, Jean Dixon, through his secretary, Rosemary Wood. I met with Dixon in the Oval Office in 1971. The following year, our prediction of terrorist attacks in the United States in the wake of the Munich massacre spurred Nixon to create the Cabinet Committee on Counterterrorism. Right, so she had influence over president. So when you read the Bible, you talk about Babylon, or you talk about Pharaoh, and Pharaoh summons the magicians. Here, Nixon had regular contact and even would bring Jean Dixon to the Oval Office. So the leader of the country would bring the witch, the astrologer, into the Oval Office to instruct him on how to run the country, so to speak. All right. Then you have, she was one of several astrologers who gave advice to Nancy Reagan, right? So Nancy Reagan had a slew of them. And so when you read in the Bible and it says Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar would summons the magicians, the soothsayers, the astrologers, all these people to come and give him advice. This happened in America also. So remember, when we're looking at prophecy, it has to be very specific. When we're looking at, when the Bible say Babylon or Egypt or whatever, spiritually, you have to look at it and say, okay, it's very specific. It has to have all the pieces together. You I heard recently that somebody got convicted, some president of a country got convicted for corruption, based upon a witch testimony. This is crazy stuff. Like how can you bring to court a witch and take her testimony? Probably has dealing with her. Probably is a concubine. so this is what it is. So yeah. So Nancy Reagan would regular get advice from Jean Dixon, and but she had a slew of them. So the question was, when her husband was shot, did they tell her to tell her husband, you're gonna get shot, or they're gonna try to take you out? You see, this is where the question is. And so we know that Jean Dixon just did a lot of predictions that it just she don't stop mess. So I'll give you two of the mess. Say 1971, in her book The Call to Glory, Dixon predicted that an apocalyptic war of Armageddon would occur about 2020. So we passed 2020, and we didn't have apocalyptic war. Good year though, 2020. That's so cute. You see how you could do this. And in 1969, she predicted that there'll be war between China and Russia that will occur between 2025 and 2037, initiated and won by China. So she predicted that China and Russia is going to go to war. Now, China and Russia is actually working together right now. So probably next year, right? Because you have 1 year for that prophecy to come true. But just think about it. A war between 2025 and 2037. So she making predictions. She died 93 in 1997. She died at the age of 93 in 1997. And she's making prediction way off into the future. And, with these great numbers. And you say, okay, even when she make it way off in the future, she's gonna have to be 100 and something to live to see these prophecies. And she didn't live to see them, so you can't see how crazy this is. Way off into the future. And then the prophecy that she's predicted, she give it between 2025 and 2037. So that's a 12-year span. Yeah, okay. And you see, it's very fluid. It's not like, say, in the Bible, say, this is going to happen in this. And when the clock struck 1844 at Yom Kippur, boom, this happens. It's a different story. The Bible is the Bible gives you specific dates, the day, the hour, and when it happens exactly. That's the difference. So, what's my point here? When we talk about Babylon is here, we're talking about that you have leaders of the country that will summon the magician. So if you're reading this and you read the Bible, somebody will say, we live in modern times, Lloyd. And I say, yeah. Well, what does that mean? Modern times. And I say, well, back in the time, old time, the leaders of the country will summon the magicians. And somebody say, yeah, but we don't do that anymore. We go to astronomers. So now what does the astronomer say, like Elon Musk is doing? He's saying us that we're going to live on Mars, and he's sending up rockets. it's silly. Or you have these soothsayers, or whatever you call them, that, the pharmacia people, the witches down there in like 287 and stuff like that, the pharmaceutical capital of the world. And they're brewing up some stuff. They're big multi-millionaire brewers of pharmacia. And what is happening? How their brews are coming up? What's going on with the society? Society getting better? Now you have this new set of pharmacias or pharmaceutical people, and they tell us that they're going to use AI to fix genetic defects and stuff like that. Fascinating. I'll be interested to watch that. I'm just not planning to take their products. So we have this still going on. The astronomers and the astrologers, and we have the soothsayers and the wise men and the stuff like that. And they all together don't make a hill of beans. Exodus chapter 7, verse 10 through 12. So nothing has changed. People say, oh no, we're in the modern times. I'm like, your leaders are going to witches and wizards and all kind of people with bones and dice, rolling the dice and telling you how to run the government and peer death and destruction and pestilence. And the pharmacia people, they're like, listen, vaccinate the people them with all this type of stuff, and the people are dropping dead. It don't work. Exodus chapter 7, verse 10 through 12 says, and Moses and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh. And they did so as the Lord had commanded. And Pharaoh cast down his rod. So Pharaoh cast down his rod before, Aaron. Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. You see, Aaron and Moses, they're magicians. See, you see that is, so we would deal with Egypt, and you deal with Joseph, or you deal with Aaron and Moses, or you deal with Daniel. You deal with magician. As a matter of fact, I can't remember who, but somebody was telling me that in the occult, I think it was somebody I knew that used to belong to the occult. He was telling me in the occult, I think Joseph they view as a magician. They still hold him as a magician. I think one of them they view them as they don't believe it was. They believe that they were doing this by magic. And you're going to see this here. This is what triggered me to say that thought. One of them, you tell me one day if you see me, which one of them they view. Somebody was telling me that they will draw him as a magician, not as a god, somebody of God. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and sorcerers. Now the magicians, it is all magicians, but the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. So it wasn't real. You see, the Bible is saying literally, one is real and one is not real, but they made it happen. So they can make things happen. So that's why they have power, but they're limited in power. For they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. That's amazing. And but Aaron's rod swallowed up their rod, so their rod disappeared. But they say, we need to know what kind of he seemed to be just a more powerful magician than us. How is he doing this? All right, Daniel chapter 12, verse 1 through 4 and 9 through 10. So notice here, Babylon, as I say, is still with us. Somebody say, oh no, it's not with us. They still consult magician and witchcraft people and devil people. They still do this. Nothing has changed. People getting some bones and then reading what the bone or reading your palm. You want to see where the magicians are, the astrologers and these witches, like people in a place like Las Vegas and Atlantic City. Anywhere there's gambling, because it's chance, it's 100% chance and stuff like that. So I think they run in countries like this. Daniel chapter 12, verse 1 through 4. Notice it says here, and Daniel chapter, oh no, I skipped that. I was going to read it again. Sake of time, I have to go on to Daniel 2, verse 1 and 2. Notice here, Daniel 2, verse 1 and 2. And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dream. So they came and stood before him, and they drew a blank. Because remember, and you know the story, for them to be able to tell you they need something to work on. If they can't get something to work on, they can't tell you what is it that is about to go down. So they need something to work on. And so at this point here, they need to hear the dream. No, in Pharaoh's situation, Pharaoh gave them the dream. All right? In Pharaoh's situation, Pharaoh gave them the dream. Pharaoh says, I'll give you the dream, and then you tell me. In this situation, they didn't know the dream. So how are you going to know what's in somebody's head? See, there's a limit to it. So God was like, so I don't know if at that point they got better. And they're like, we'd have been able to give Pharaoh some foolish interpretation. In this situation in Nebuchadnezzar, as a dream, well, first you have to know what the dream is in order for you to even get a stab in the dark, because they're good at stabbing in the dark. They're good at saying, this is going to happen or whatever. And it never happened the way they say it. So they had a dream. And they get this dream, but they couldn't get the dream. But notice again, how is the system running? The system is running on the same thing again. Notice in modern Babylon, it says pharmakia and it says merchant. In Egypt, it's the same magicians. In the time of Babylon, it's the same magicians. It's always the same. There's always magicians. And there's people who they're going to solve problems. People just keep dying and dropping dead of these diseases, but they're telling you, we're going to solve your disease. But the more people solve it, it appears side effects. And people, notice almost all the drugs that you get, even drugs for AIDS, various different drugs that you're not supposed to, can cause you to get addicted, hallucinate, stuff like that. Mess with the mind. Very fascinating, right? And you see, the more you see people on the side of the street, the more you see that the potion is not even working, it's backfiring on the society and the people taking it. So here you have again, somebody will tell me now, because my theme again, we're talking about modernity, that we're living in modern times. And I look at it and I say, yeah, I guess we're in modern times, but we're still dealing with the same element. The same element is always there. And most people have not really think why this element is there. Because if you're in a country that says we're scientific, why in a scientific place there's so much dark arts and so much secret societies and so much people taking potions? Why there's so much mental health issue? Why people seem to be possessed and just go into a school and go even into churches and stab people up? That's what's going on in Australia. Why all these things are happening? The only way you can get to understand, that's why I said the wicked is wicked. They're just do wickedly and they don't understand what's going on. But that there's a bigger battle, there's a spiritual battle going on. And this battle is outlined in the Bible. That's the only way you can really understand fully what's happening. And you can see it because, let's say, when you have the leaders going to, instead of going to, just professors or people just giving you data information and tell you history, you have people that go into somebody with a crystal ball. Revelation chapter 8, 17, talking about now Babylon, Revelation chapter 17, verse 1 through 6. Revelation chapter 17, verse 1 through 6. Notice again, as we talk about Babylon is still here. Now, this is Babylon, and it's described, when we're reading Revelation 18, it's described as a her, a she. Often it's described as a her. And remember, the kings are not the spiritual part. So remember, so the kings are not spiritual parts. I keep saying remember. So kings are not spiritual part. The kings are like the part that deal with the civil, but they lean on the magicians. Just call them magicians, to kind of have them run the system. So when we come to modern Babylon, we have to be looking for the same thing. You have to be looking and say, okay, there's the civil leaders. Do they go to witches and astrologers and sorcerers and stuff like that? Do they have advice in them? Demons from the occult and that type of stuff. Okay. So hence there's two entities, right? So there's the civil and then there's the spiritual side. But the spiritual side is not often what we think as pastors, and it's supposed to be like Daniel. There's the spiritual side that has to do with the occult. So notice in Revelation 17, verse 1 through 6, it deals, let's scroll this a little bit here. It deals now with this idea that there is a spiritual side, and the spiritual side is often referred to in feminine terms, female terms. Just like in time of Solomon the same thing. The women led him down this path of Satan worship, Ashtaroth, so forth. So same thing. As I say, I can just go into any kingdom and I can show you that it's always there. This element is always there. The spiritual side, monks, priests, whatever. You're thinking who they're talking to and who they're conjuring up. So notice here, it's Saul, King Saul as an example. Went when he failed and God rejected him, he went to the witch of Endor. It is some female. So just like how they'll go to Jean Nixon, or Reagan, and they get them to work up some things, rub up some ball. Anyhow, so Revelation 17, verse 1 through 6 says, and there came one of the seven angels with had seven vials and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither, and I showed thee the judgment of the great whore which sitteth upon many waters. So this element is there. Let not nobody fool you and tell you, oh, we in modern times they don't deal with this element. This element is there. This element is there. You see some of these people doing some things and making decisions. You be like, what in the world? Just think about it. Many people were offended. I don't know how you felt about that when 2 weeks ago or so, President Biden on declared Passover when society celebrate Easter Sunday. What was it they're celebrating? Whatever they were doing. I don't know if it's Easter Friday or Easter Sunday. But they celebrated, I guess, the resurrection of Jesus, and he declared it like that day to be the LGBTQIA plus day or something, whatever it did. Fully, I just saw it and thinking, but they say it's gonna fall on different days of the year, but they just that day, I guess in spring, they're celebrating. So they were celebrating Passover and LGBTQIA plus. Talk about Mystery Babylon and or cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Very strange. Somebody said, well, next year is not going to fall on that same day. Yeah, but at least we did it that this year, and it was very interesting. So they were celebrating both things. Uh, we don't celebrate either, but I'm just saying. It just seems strange. So he will show you the judgment of the great horde that sit upon many waters. Notice here now, very important. When we understand this, we understand the mystery religion of Babylon. It's still here. Notice here. With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So there's an illicit relationship going on with the kings, the civil leaders, and this woman that is into spiritualism, this witch. Very important. Or the spiritual leaders. Because somebody said, well, Lord, could the spiritual leaders be men? Yeah, it's just the spiritual leaders. Because remember, when Babylon is summoning magicians, or Egypt or Pharaoh or whatever, sometimes it could be a female. When a king is doing this, sometimes it could be a female and sometimes it could be a male. Most of the time, magicians were male, but sometimes it could be a female. The Bible referred to them as she. So important. So this, the Bible is telling us, in the last days, from the beginning of times, the moment, man sinned, they went on to this demonic business. And this is still happening in our time. And notice here it says, so he carried me away in the spirit in the world, into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit on a scarlet-colored beast, full of the name of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So remember, this woman is not the beast. This is what they teach often when I remember listening to people doing prophecy. She is not the beast. She's sitting on the beast. She's riding the beast. She is not the beast, and she will never be the beast. Remember, the kings of the earth are the heads of the entity that she's riding. She's riding them because she's having sex with them, illicit sex with them, because it's immoral. It's ungodly what she's doing, because this is demonic behavior. She's in connection not with God but with Satan, and she bring her Satanism to the leaders that ended up in war, famine, and pestilence. You get that? So when you look at it now, he goes into the wilderness and he saw a woman. She is not the beast. She is sitting on the beast. And she is in red. The beast is red and full of the name of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns, because 3 of the heads were plucked up and by 538. And only 3 of the heads are left. And she is riding the head. When the leaders, the civil leaders, the kings of these 7 empires need to make decision, they go to her, which is the magicians, but the magicians claim to be Christian, and they go to her and they may get their decision from her. Does it make sense? And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. You can see this today, and decked with gold and precious stone, having the golden cup in her hand, full of the abomination of the filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, the abomination of the earth. So Babylon is still with us. Babylon never left, so to speak. Babylon just morphed into various different kingdoms. The same process that Babylon did, we call the magicians. Egypt did it. Solomon did it with these women he was having fornication with. And they led them down a path of Satan worship, in other words. When you go to mystery religion in the 7 kingdoms of Western Europe, you find that the Catholic Church represent this entity. And this is where you get the secret societies and the dark arts mainly coming out of Western Europe. And they control the kings of this world. And notice here, and I saw the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration, who killed the saints? it was the kings, but they did it at the command of the woman that I was doing fornication with, which will take us back to the story of John the Baptist. John the Baptist was killed because these two women, her daughter danced because she's a mother, she has a daughter, she danced, and John the Baptist get killed. This thing is it will be always a study, but you get the point. So mystery religion never left us. It's always there, and it's always end up killing the saints, so to speak, or war with the saints. But there's more to the story. So whether we deal with Gene Nixon or whoever we deal with, it's always the same thing. And so don't tell me all these presidents and stuff like that. Might not be every single one of them, but a lot of them they end up going down the path of Saul, but they end up with always death and destruction and war, famine, and pestilence. It never end up good. Satan just end up killing all of them and killing the people that follow them and take their lead. All right, we'll deal with more tomorrow. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for your word. And this day I pray, dear Lord, that you may continue to bless and guide us as we walk in the light of thy countenance. May it be with us and bless our walk this day and our work this day for Christ's sake. Amen. Well, thanks to be with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live tomorrow. We should talk about natural health. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.